The far-right takeover of the judicial system in this country is already underway. And just today, they allowed a president to have immunity, total immunity, which means the Jack Smith case.
Actually, it wasn't
Donald
total
Trump
immunity. Again, Francesca, look, with respect, the US Supreme Court has ruled. Let me
clarify
for viewers, right? You said they've given him total immunity. They haven't. The Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump is partially immune from prosecution for actions taken while he was in the White House. They said that while the president's immune from criminal prosecution for official acts taken in office, he is not immune for unofficial acts. Big difference to total immunity. So again, why exaggerate?
You keep saying that, no, it's just partial immunity for official acts. What is an official act of the president? If you actually listen to the oral arguments that were presented before the Supreme Court, what that act even is and the ability to even probe for it is stuff right now that is now presumed to be immune. When Donald Trump is asking Pence, hey, can you throw out the election because I don't like the results, which is a real thing that happened, by the way. As much as Travis like to say that's not true, that is counted as an official action because these are the roles of the president and vice president, deciding how to count the electoral votes. That is insanity to me. If Biden were to do anything even remotely similar, Republicans would lose their minds.
Have you read the decision? I know it just came out this morning, but have you gone through the decision yet?
I read up to page 25, and in part of it, I can read it out to you. He explicitly calls out that whenever the president and vice president discuss their official responsibilities, they engage in official conduct, meaning that presiding over the January 6th certification proceeding, at which members yes, so that did count as official conduct. So if you thought that he was trying to do a coup, try to steal the election by saying, hey, do you think you can throw those votes out? Well, that's beyond prosecution.
You can dispute or object to any actions that Trump takes, but it is simply the case that when a president is carrying out his duties and is speaking to his subordinates in the White House, that is obviously official business. If he were to bring in a bunch of drug dealers and hookers or something, that would probably be an unofficial crime, not related to his duties as president. And the reason that this matters and why it's really a moderate decision is because it goes back about 40 years to Nixon versus Fitzgerald, which found out that the president, yes, indeed, has quite a lot of immunity, at least from civil liability. And the reason that this is such a novel bombshell case is because until Joe Biden tried to throw his rival into the clink, we didn't prosecute presidents because that's the kind of behavior typical of banana republics and tin pot dictatorships. But the argument, and I'm sure you've read this, even if you've just read the first 25 pages, goes all the way back to the Marshall Court. It goes all the way back to the finding that the presidency does have certain privileges. It's not totally beholden to the other two branches of government. It's got an executive privilege. We have a separation of powers here. It goes back to the Federalist Papers when the framers of the Constitution said that they need a vigorous presidency because the problem with the first American Republic, which was the Articles of Confederation, was that you didn't have any strong executive power. So this is not something new, perfectly in keeping with the American legal tradition.
Joe, you're a reasonable man. You don't want to do this, but here's the reality. This is a war. This is a war now, and we are fighting for our country, and these are going to take it away. You, Clarence Uncle Thomas. You, Joe, you now have the right to take that Trump out. Take him out, Joe.
Whoa.
If he was, and this was 1940, you'd take him out. Well, he is, and this is 1940. Take him out. Come up, or they'll bus up.
They're a little unhinged right now. YouTube, I'm playing this for educational purposes. You know I'm always peaceful. She was right. We are in a war. I didn't say she was wrong on that part. But the Supreme Court put us in this position. You know that, right? What the Supreme Court did was just disgusting. It was awful. And I replied to Josie, very smart people, libertarians and others. I strongly disagree with Josie, the redheaded libertarian. And that's the topic that this is on. The topic that we're talking about is the Supreme Court ruling on immunity. So they basically said the president is immune from official acts that are the powers that are bestowed upon the president in the Constitution. That doesn't make sense to me. We have a constitutional right to free speech, but you don't say citizens are immune because of free speech. She said, dearest, Joe Biden does not have presidential immunity to unlive President Trump under the SCOTUS ruling. No. So she came pretty hard with that. No, actually, that's debatable. Unliving your political opponent is not explicit, expressed, or delegated by Article 2. I agree with that, but that's all for interpretation. It is not an enumerated or official power. Hope this helps. Biden could argue that those hypothetical actions against Trump were to save democracy, you know, like what they're saying every day, framing it as an official act. I'm not saying he's going to do that, but I'm saying he could argue it. The Supreme Court said the president has immunity for official acts. So now what the left will do is they're like, bet. We weren't even trying to get Trump this time around. We pushed the charges all the way to the election just to interfere with the election. We weren't predicting that all of these cases would come through. Maybe we hope one might, but so you went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said you've got immunity from official acts, even if they're impeached. That's my interpretation. My interpretation is the Supreme Court said the president, if it's an official act, it would have to be determined by the court. But if it is an official act, who owns the courts? DC. If anything that you're doing in this realm is going to DC, why would you be on the right and celebrate this? Yeah, it's good for Trump in the short term, but the ruling doesn't make sense. And long term, not good. Because now all this does is delay things. But say you had time to flesh out Trump's official acts from his private acts. It would be happening in DC. So in DC, if it was a Biden problem, it would be official act. If it's a Trump problem, it would be a private act. You don't see the problem with it? You can't just take the president from the presidency to the courtroom. That makes no sense, and that is in the Constitution. Congress has the right to impeach, and then after that it says, basically, then you can put him on trial. That's why they had it that way. The president is not above the law. Nobody said that. The president is an institution separate from the law. The judicial branch is the law. The legislative branch is the lawmaking part. And the president is the executive branch. The person who is president is the executive branch. They represent the executive branch forever. That's why they have Secret Service protection for life, because they represent the executive branch even when they're done. You wouldn't want a foreign country unliving of ex-president. That makes you look crazy, weak. At any point from when they are chosen to be the executive branch to after when they are representing, you can impeach them. If they're impeached, there is no official, there is no private. You can charge them on anything. And then just like if it's free speech, in the courtroom, you argue free speech. If it's constitutional power, you go into the courtroom and you argue, I did this drone strike on the 16-year-old and it was a constitutional power I had. So you see how bad the ruling is, and Josie, the redheaded libertarian, is even off on it.
Middle MAGA.